Daniel Brooks was a man everyone in the city knew. He was a self-made millionaire, the kind of man who walked into a room and drew attention without trying. His sharp suits, polished shoes, and calm but confident face made people whisper his name even before he spoke. But on that quiet evening, Daniel wasn't looking for attention. He only wanted a simple meal, away from his endless meetings, phone calls, and responsibilities. The restaurant he chose was small and family-friendly, the kind of place where parents brought children after school. Daniel had not been inside such a place in years. His life had been about luxury hotels, business dinners, and private gatherings. The warm smell of baked bread and fried chicken surprised him, filling his chest with a strange comfort. He asked for a table near the window, where the soft evening light touched the glass. As he waited for his food, he loosened his tie and leaned back, trying to remember the last time he had enjoyed such a calm atmosphere. That was when he noticed them. At first, it was only laughter that caught his ear. The kind of laughter children make when they forget the world around them. He turned his head slightly and saw a woman sitting at a table with 3 children. Something about her profile, her calm posture, the way she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear made his heart stop. It was Maya. Daniel blinked twice, almost not believing what his eyes told him. Maya, the woman he once called his wife, the woman he loved more than anything but lost because of his own mistakes, was sitting only a few steps away from him. He hadn't seen her in almost 10 years. His chest tightened. Memories rushed back without mercy, her warm smile, the softness of her voice, the tears in her eyes the day she walked away. Their marriage had ended not in hatred but in silence, in the distance that grew when Daniel gave more of himself to his business than to his home. He had told himself he did it for both of them, but in the end, all he gave her was loneliness. But there was something even more shocking than Maya herself. Sitting around her were 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. They were not toddlers, but perhaps 7 or 8 years old, old enough to chatter endlessly, old enough to laugh freely. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He could not look away. The children's faces, he knew those faces. The shape of their noses, the curve of their smiles, even the deep brown of their eyes. They looked so much like him that his mind refused to accept it at first. It was as if he was staring into smaller mirrors of himself. He gripped the edge of the table to steady his hands. His heart pounded, not with the excitement of a businessman about to close a deal, but with the fear of a man facing a truth he never imagined. Could they be his? The thought struck him like a wave, and for a moment, he could not breathe. Maya seemed different now. Her beauty was calmer, stronger, not the soft and playful energy he remembered. She carried herself with the quiet grace of a woman who had learned to fight her battles alone. She wore a simple dress, nothing fancy, but to Daniel she looked brighter than all the diamonds he had ever bought. He wanted to get up, to walk to her table, to ask 100 questions at once. But his legs felt heavy. What if she turned him away? What if she told the children to ignore him? What if those children were not his at all, and he was only seeing what his guilty heart wanted to see? The children laughed again. One of the boys made a silly face, and the little girl giggled so loudly that a few other diners turned their heads. Maya smiled too, though her smile carried a tiredness Daniel had never noticed before. Daniel's mind was a storm. He remembered the nights when he had chosen meetings over dinners with Maya, the mornings when she asked for just a little more of his time, and the evenings when she waited by the door, hoping he would come home earlier. He had promised her many things, but in the end, he gave her nothing she truly needed. Now, sitting just a few feet away, was the life he could have had: the laughter of children, the warmth of a family dinner, the simple joy of togetherness. He swallowed hard. The waitress brought his food, but he barely noticed. His eyes stayed on Maya, and his mind repeated the same question: why didn't she tell me? As if sensing someone's gaze, Maya suddenly lifted her head. Her eyes met his. For a brief second, the world around them went silent. No clinking glasses, no laughter, no sound of sizzling food. Only her eyes, wide with shock, staring directly into his. Daniel's breath caught. She recognized him instantly. He saw it in the way her lips parted, in the way her hand froze over the spoon. The children noticed too. One of the boys followed his mother's eyes and looked at Daniel. Then the little girl turned her head, and so did the other boy. Their curious stares hit him all at once. Daniel didn't know if he should smile or look away. But the resemblance was too strong. The girl tilted her head, studying his face. "Mom," she whispered loudly enough for him to hear, "why does that man look like us?" The room seemed to spin. Maya quickly reached for her daughter's hand, shushing her gently, but her face had already turned pale. Daniel's heart thundered in his chest. He could no longer stay seated. Slowly, with trembling hands, he pushed his chair back and stood. For the first time in years, Daniel Brooks, the millionaire everyone admired, was not a man of wealth, power, or fame. He was simply a man standing at the edge of a truth that could change his life forever. And with unsteady steps, he began to walk toward Maya's table. Daniel's footsteps felt heavier with every step he took toward Maya's table. His body looked calm from the outside, but inside his heart raced like a man running out of time. He had faced boardrooms full of powerful men, signed million-dollar contracts without blinking, and spoken in front of hundreds without fear. But now, just a few steps away from Maya and the children, he felt like a nervous young man again. Maya looked up at him, her eyes sharp but uncertain. For a second, Daniel thought she might tell him to leave. Her lips pressed together as if holding back a storm of words. But she didn't move. The children, wide-eyed and curious, waited for her to explain who the stranger was. "Hello, Maya," Daniel said softly. His voice carried the weight of years, both of longing and regret. "Daniel," she whispered, almost in disbelief. Her spoon clinked gently against her plate as she set it down. Silence wrapped around the table. The children stared between the two adults like they were watching a mystery unfold. One of the boys leaned closer to his sister and whispered, "He really looks like us." The girl giggled nervously, and Maya placed her hand gently on their shoulders, as if to calm them. Daniel cleared his throat. "I didn't expect to see you here. It's been a long time." "Yes," Maya answered, her tone polite but distant. "A very long time." Her voice carried no warmth, no softness like it used to. It was calm, strong, but guarded like a woman who had built walls around her heart to protect it. Daniel could hardly blame her. He stood there for a moment, unsure if he should sit or leave. Finally, Maya gave the smallest nod, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. Daniel sat down slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. The children looked at him with open curiosity. Their small faces were bright and lively, full of questions they hadn't yet learned how to ask politely. Daniel smiled awkwardly at them, his heart twisting at the undeniable resemblance. "They're beautiful," he said finally, his voice soft. Maya's eyes hardened slightly. "They're mine," she replied firmly, as if reminding him of the distance between them. The words stung, but Daniel nodded. He didn't want to argue. Not now. For a moment, the silence was filled only by the sound of clinking cutlery from other tables and the laughter of families around them. Daniel's gaze drifted to the children again. The girl had the same deep brown eyes as him, full of curiosity and mischief. The boys shared his strong jawline and his serious brows, though their smiles were bright and playful. It was like looking into three small mirrors of the life he had never known. He swallowed hard, memories rushing back. He remembered the first time he met Maya. She had been working at a small bookstore, her laughter filling the room when he walked in to buy a novel he never finished. She was kind, full of life, and carried a warmth that made him feel at home. They had fallen in love quickly. She believed in him when no one else did, supported him when he had nothing but big dreams. She cooked for him in their tiny apartment, encouraged him when he wanted to quit, and smiled at him when he came home late, even when she was tired. But as the years passed, Daniel's dreams became bigger, and his hunger for success consumed him. He spent longer nights at the office, missed anniversaries, and cancelled dinners. He told himself it was temporary, that once he succeeded, they would have the life she deserved. But by the time he reached the top, she was gone. The last night they were together was etched into his memory. She had stood by the door with her suitcase, tears streaming down her face. "I don't want money, Daniel," she had said. "I want a husband who's here. I want a family, not loneliness." He hadn't stopped her. At the time, pride and ambition had blinded him. He thought she would return, that love would forgive all. But she never did. And now, sitting across from her after all these years, with 3 children who looked exactly like him, Daniel realized just how much he had lost. He forced himself back to the present. "Maya," he said quietly, they look like me." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't answer right away. The children, however, perked up at his words. One of the boys tilted his head and asked, "Do we know you?" Daniel's throat tightened. "Not yet," he said carefully, glancing at Maya. The little girl leaned forward. "But you look like us," she said, her small voice full of curiosity. Maya's jaw tightened. "That's enough questions," she said firmly, her voice gentle but clear. The children went quiet, though they still peeked at Daniel with interest. Daniel wanted to ask 100 questions. Were they truly his children? Why hadn't she told him? Did she think he wouldn't care? Or had she simply lost faith in him completely? But looking at Maya's guarded eyes, he knew it wasn't the time to press her. She was protecting herself, and perhaps protecting the children too. Still, the weight of possibility burned inside him. His chest ached with the thought that he might have missed 8 years of their lives, their first words, their first steps, their birthdays. "May I see you again?" he asked carefully, his voice almost trembling. Maya stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "I don't know, Daniel," she finally said. "I don't know if that's a good idea." Her words pierced him, but he nodded slowly. He couldn't expect forgiveness so easily. The children began chatting again, their voices cheerful, unaware of the heavy silence between the adults. One of the boys reached for a piece of bread and offered it to his sister, making her laugh. The sound filled Daniel's heart with a strange mixture of joy and sorrow. He looked back at Maya. "You look well," he said softly, almost as if trying to break the wall between them. She gave him a small, polite smile, but her eyes remained guarded. "Life goes on," she replied simply. And in that moment, Daniel realized that while his world had stopped, hers had kept moving. She had built a life without him, and he wasn't sure if there was space left in it for him anymore. But deep down, he also knew one thing for certain: he couldn't just walk away this time. Daniel sat at the table, feeling both close and far from the woman he once called his wife. The restaurant's warmth surrounded him, yet all he felt was the sharp weight of tension between them. Maya kept her shoulders straight, her face calm, but her eyes told a different story. They were eyes that had once looked at him with love, now guarded and unreadable. The children, however, were not as controlled. They whispered, giggled, and stared at Daniel with open curiosity. The little girl leaned across the table, her small voice carrying a question that made Maya's hand tighten around her glass. "Mom, who is he?" Maya hesitated. Daniel held his breath, waiting. For years, he had imagined meeting Maya again, but not like this, not with 3 children staring at him as though he were a puzzle piece missing from their lives. "He's an old friend, Maya said finally. Her voice was calm, but Daniel noticed the way her eyes flickered nervously. The children seemed half satisfied, though the boy sitting closest to Maya wasn't convinced. But Mom, he looks like us, he said again, louder this time. His tone was playful, but the words pierced Daniel like a knife. Maya gave a sharp but gentle look. Eat your food, she said softly. Daniel forced a small smile. They're smart, he said quietly. Maya's gaze met his for a moment, sharp as glass. They notice things, she replied simply. Daniel wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but he could see Maya's guard. This was not the place for deep truths. Still, he couldn't leave the table without at least starting a bridge, no matter how small. The waitress returned with water, giving Daniel a moment to gather himself. As she walked away, Daniel leaned slightly forward. Maya. I never imagined this, he admitted. His voice shook more than he wanted it to. Maya didn't answer right away. She lifted a spoonful of soup, took her time, then finally said, neither did I. The words hung heavy in the air. Daniel looked at the children again. Their laughter and chatter created a strange contrast to the silence between the adults. It was almost cruel how life could be so light for them and so heavy for him at the same time. One of the boys suddenly turned toward Daniel. Do you have kids? He asked innocently. The question struck Daniel like lightning. His throat tightened, and he almost said the truth that maybe he did, sitting right in front of him. But instead, he forced a careful smile. No, he said softly. Not yet. The boy nodded, then went back to his breadsticks, but Maya's eyes lingered on Daniel. There was a flicker of something pain, maybe, or regret, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. Daniel leaned back, his mind full of memories. He remembered how Maya had once dreamed of children. She used to point at families in the park, whispering about how beautiful it would be to raise kids together. Back then, he had smiled and agreed, but secretly he had always told himself, later. First success, then family. Now, looking at these children, he realized that later had stolen everything from him. He cleared his throat. Maya, I know this isn't the place, but can we talk? Just you and me. Maya's hand froze around her fork. For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then, with a sigh, she looked at him directly. Daniel, we said everything we needed to say years ago. Not everything, he whispered quickly. His voice carried desperation he hadn't planned to show. I didn't know about them. Maya's eyes sharpened. We're not discussing this here, she said firmly, her voice low so the children wouldn't notice. Daniel nodded slowly, respecting her boundary. But inside, his chest ached. He could not leave this unfinished. The children, unaware of the storm between the adults, began another round of laughter. The little girl leaned over and whispered something in her brother's ear, and soon they were all giggling. Their joy was pure, untouched by the weight of secrets. Daniel watched them with a strange mixture of longing and sorrow. He wondered what their voices had sounded like as babies, what their first words were, who had taught them to tie their shoes. All those milestones had passed without him, stolen by time and silence. One of the boys turned to him again. Do you like soccer? Daniel smiled, surprised by the innocent question. I used to play when I was your age, he replied. The boy's eyes lit up. Really? We play all the time. Daniel laughed softly, the sound almost foreign to him. Then maybe you could teach me your tricks one day, he said. The boy's face brightened, but Maya gave a quiet cough, reminding them to finish their meal. Still, Daniel caught the small spark of connection, and it warmed something inside him he thought had died long ago. Finally, Maya began gathering napkins and tidying the table. It's getting late, she said to the children. We should head home. Daniel's heart sank. He wasn't ready for the evening to end. Maya, he said softly, please. Just give me a little time. I don't want to walk away like a stranger. She looked at him, her expression torn between anger and sadness. That's what you became, Daniel. A stranger. The words cut deep, but Daniel didn't look away. Then let me change that, he whispered. For the first time, her eyes softened just slightly. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, but something in between. We'll see, she said quietly. She stood, guiding the children to gather their jackets. The little girl waved at Daniel shyly, and his heart melted. He gave a small wave back, his throat too tight to speak. As Maya walked past him, her perfume brushed against him, a scent so familiar it pulled him back to years of love and loss. And when the door closed behind them, Daniel sat in silence, staring at the empty chairs. His food was untouched, but his heart was full of questions, regrets, and a fragile spark of hope. He knew one thing for certain: he could not let this chance slip away. Not again. James Donovan had faced many situations in his life: angry investors, failed contracts, even courtroom battles. But nothing compared to the fear that gripped him now. Standing only a few steps away from Maya, with 2 children clinging to her hands, he felt like a man stripped of every defense. He cleared his throat, but his voice still shook. Maya. Her head turned slowly, and when their eyes met, James felt as though the years between them melted away. Yet her gaze was different now. There was no warmth, no softness. Only caution, like someone who had learned to protect herself after too many wounds. Hello, James, she replied at last. Her tone was calm but sharp, like a door closed halfway, allowing no easy entrance. For a few seconds, he simply stared at her, searching for words. All the speeches he had given in boardrooms, all the negotiations he had mastered, failed him in this moment. His chest ached with unspoken emotions. They look like me, he finally said, glancing at the twins. Maya's hand tightened around theirs immediately. Stop, she said firmly. James hesitated, his heart pounding. I can't. Not when it's so clear. Maya, are they mine? Her jaw tightened. Her eyes flicked toward the children, then back at him. For a long while, silence stretched between them, filled only by the chatter of travelers and the sound of rolling suitcases. James, she said at last, her voice low, you lost the right to ask me that years ago. The words cut deep. He winced, but he refused to step back. Maybe I did, he admitted. But if they are my children, I need to know. Please, Maya. Don't keep this from me. Her expression hardened. Where were you when I needed you? When they needed you? You were too busy building your empire. I carried them alone, raised them alone, wiped their tears and quieted their fears. You were not there. James swallowed the lump in his throat. There was no defense. Everything she said was true. He had been absent, blind to the most important thing in life. The boy tugged on Maya's sleeve. Mommy, who is he? His voice was soft, curious, innocent. Maya knelt down, brushing his hair back gently. He's someone I used to know, she whispered. The answer pierced James's heart. Someone I used to know. He had once been her husband, her partner, her love. Now he was nothing more than a stranger in her children's eyes. He crouched slightly, meeting the twins at their level. His voice was gentle, trembling. Hello, he said softly. My name is James. The girl tilted her head, her dimpled smile flashing. Hi, she answered shyly. Before James could say more, Maya stepped between them, her protective stance firm. That's enough, she said, her voice shaking with emotion. You don't get to appear after all this time and expect to walk into their lives. James stood again, his shoulders heavy. Then let me earn it, he pleaded. If they're mine, let me prove I can be different. I don't want to take anything away from you, Maya. I can't walk away now. Not knowing. Her eyes glistened, though she quickly blinked back the tears. You don't understand. Being a father isn't about promises made in an airport. It's years of showing up, even when it's hard, even when you're tired. You never showed up for me. Why should I believe you'll show up for them? His throat tightened. For a moment, he said nothing. Then, with a voice raw with regret, he whispered, because I can't lose them too. I already lost you. The words hung in the air. Maya's face softened for just a moment, a flicker of the past shining through. Then she turned her head, her grip on the children unyielding. James, she said quietly, you don't know what you're asking. You can't erase the years you missed. You can't undo the nights they asked questions I couldn't answer. And you can't step in now just because fate put us in the same airport. I know, he admitted. His voice cracked. I can't change the past. But I can choose the future. If you give me the chance. Maya studied him, torn between the anger of old wounds and the memory of who he once was. The children fidgeted, tugging at her hands, unaware of the storm around them. Finally, after a long silence, she spoke. Her words were quiet, almost reluctant. Yes, James. They're yours. The world seemed to tilt. His chest tightened, his breath caught. He had suspected it, believed it, but hearing the truth still hit him like a tidal wave. A rush of joy mixed with overwhelming guilt flooded through him. He took a step closer, but Maya raised her hand, stopping him. Don't think this changes everything, she warned. They don't know you. They don't need confusion in their lives. If you want to be in their world, you'll have to prove you deserve it. James nodded slowly, his voice low but firm. Then I will. Whatever it takes. The boarding call echoed again, but James no longer cared about flights or meetings. His life had shifted in this single moment. He was no longer just a millionaire chasing success. He was a man staring at the family he never knew, determined not to lose them again. James stood there in silence, his heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear the noise of the airport around him. Maya's words, yes, their years echoed in his head like thunder. His chest tightened with a mix of emotions he could hardly name, relief, joy, guilt, and fear all at once. He looked at the children again, really looked at them. The boy was fiddling with the handle of his small suitcase, the girl humming quietly as she clutched her mother's hand. They were his flesh and blood. His children. And yet, they didn't even know who he was. Maya, James whispered, his voice breaking. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me know I had children? Her expression hardened, though her eyes glistened as if she were fighting back tears. Do you really want the truth? She asked quietly. Yes, James said without hesitation. I need the truth. Maya looked down at the twins, then back at James. Her voice was steady, but it carried years of pain. Because I knew you wouldn't have been there. You wouldn't have chosen us. Back then, James, your life was all about power, money, and winning. I was already begging you to notice me, to see me. Do you think you would have suddenly dropped everything to hold a crying baby at 3 in the morning? Or to sit in a doctor's office when they were sick? No. You would have left us waiting, like you always did. James's mouth opened, but no words came out. He knew she was right. Every accusation pierced through his pride like a blade. He remembered all those late nights at the office, all the times Maya had asked him to slow down, to come home early, to spend one weekend without checking emails. And every time, he had brushed her off with promises of tomorrow. Maya continued, her voice trembling now. When I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to tell you. I sat with the phone in my hand so many times, trying to dial your number. But then I remembered the way you looked at me the night I left, like I was just an obstacle standing in the way of your success. I couldn't bear to give you the chance to reject them too. So I decided to protect them from that pain. I raised them alone. Her words struck him harder than any business loss ever had. James pressed a hand to his forehead, his breathing uneven. Maya. I would have tried. I would have. No, James, she interrupted firmly. You would have tried for a week, maybe a month. Then you would have gone back to your empire. And I couldn't risk that. They needed someone constant. They needed love every single day, not just when it was convenient. James closed his eyes, guilt burning deep inside him. She was right. The man he had been back then would not have been ready. He had been too consumed by ambition, too blinded by pride to see what really mattered. When he opened his eyes again, tears threatened to spill. I can't change the past, he admitted softly. I can't undo the nights you were alone or the moments I missed. But I swear to you, Maya, I'm not that man anymore. I don't care about the empire, the meetings, the headlines. All I care about is them. He glanced at the twins, his voice trembling. And you? Maya's face softened slightly, but her guard didn't fall completely. Words are easy, James. Promises are easy. I've heard them before. I know, James said. But I'll prove it. Whatever it takes. Just give me the chance. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The children tugged at her hands, restless from standing too long. The boy looked up at James curiously. Mommy, is he family? He asked. Maya froze, her lips trembling. She couldn't answer. James crouched down, his eyes level with the twins. His heart raced, but his voice was soft, filled with sincerity. Yes, he said quietly, glancing at Maya for permission. I'm your dad. The girl tilted her head, confusion in her eyes. Dad, she repeated, the word strange on her tongue. Maya inhaled sharply, but she didn't stop him. For the first time, she allowed silence instead of denial. James blinked back tears as he smiled gently. Yes, sweetheart. I'm your dad. And I've missed so much, but I don't want to miss another moment if I can help it. The twins looked at each other, their young minds trying to process the revelation. The boy simply shrugged, then asked innocently, do you like ice cream? James let out a soft laugh through his tears. Yes. I love ice cream. The boy nodded seriously. Then you can sit with us. Maya's lips trembled at the simple innocence of her children. She turned away for a moment, wiping her eyes quickly. When she looked back at James, her voice was quieter, gentler. Don't make them promises you can't keep, James. If you're really going to be here, then be here. But if you're not, don't hurt them. I won't, James said firmly. His voice carried a determination she hadn't heard from him in years, not the determination of ambition, but of love. The boarding call echoed again, but none of them moved. The world could wait. For James Donovan, everything had changed. He had finally been given the truth, a truth that broke him and healed him at the same time. He was a father. And this time, he wasn't going to walk away. James felt as if the ground beneath him had shifted. For years, he had lived believing that his wealth and business victories defined his worth. But now, standing in front of Maya and the twins, all of that seemed so small compared to the chance he was asking for. He wasn't bargaining for money, not fighting for contracts or fame. He was pleading for something far more important, his family. Maya kept her gaze steady, but her grip on the twins' hands told a different story. She was torn inside. Her heart remembered the man who had broken her, but her eyes could not ignore the sincerity in front of her now. James, she said carefully, her voice steady but low, You can't just appear out of nowhere and expect everything to change. The twins don't know you. I don't know if I can trust you. Too much has happened. I know, James said quickly, nodding. I know I can't erase the past. I can't demand forgiveness or expect you to welcome me back. But Maya, I want to be here now. I want to earn your trust and theirs. Just let me try. Maya studied him for a long moment. She remembered nights when she cried silently, her hands on her stomach, wondering if she had made the right choice to leave him behind. She remembered every sleepless night with the twins, every moment of loneliness, every decision she had to make alone. Those memories warned her not to believe too easily. But then she looked at her children. They were watching James with open curiosity, not fear. They didn't carry her wounds. They didn't remember the broken promises or the loneliness. To them, James was simply a stranger who looked like them and had just called himself their father. The little girl tugged at Maya's hand. "Mommy, can we sit with him?" she asked softly. Maya's heart squeezed. She looked back at James, his eyes filled with tears he wasn't hiding. His face showed vulnerability, a rare thing she never saw when they were married. Back then, he always had to be strong, always in control. But here, he was stripped of pride, simply a man begging to be part of his children's lives. "Please," James whispered. "Just let me spend some time with them. Let me show you that I'm serious." Maya hesitated, then finally sighed. "All right. 1 hour. We'll sit and talk. But, James, if I see even a hint that this is just temporary for you, if I see that you're not ready to commit, I will walk away again. Do you understand?" James nodded eagerly. "Yes. I understand. Thank you, Maya." They moved to a quiet seating area near the cafe. James sat across from the twins, unsure how to begin. His heart raced. In boardrooms he always knew what to say, but here, facing two little faces who carried his blood, he felt clumsy and nervous. The boy looked at him seriously. "Do you play soccer?" James blinked, then smiled. "I did when I was your age. Not very good, but I tried." The boy's eyes lit up. "I play soccer at school. I'm the fastest runner." James leaned forward, his smile growing wider. "Really? That's amazing. I'd love to watch you play someday." The boy grinned, clearly pleased by the attention. The girl, quieter than her brother, studied James for a moment. "Do you like stories?" she asked shyly. James nodded. "I love stories. When I was a little boy, I used to read under the blanket with a flashlight because I didn't want my mom to know I was still awake." The girl giggled. "I do that too. Mommy says I should sleep, but I want to finish the book." For the first time, Maya found herself smiling despite the heaviness in her chest. She hadn't seen James smile like this in years, soft, gentle, without pride. The twins were warming to him faster than she expected. That scared her. She didn't want them to be hurt if he disappeared again. After a while, the twins became more comfortable, asking questions about him: what food he liked, what toys he had as a child, what his favorite color was. James answered each question patiently, amazed at how natural it felt. But when the boy asked, "Where were you before?" the room grew heavy again. James froze. His eyes met Maya's. She waited to see how he would answer. James leaned down, his voice gentle. "I was lost," he admitted honestly. "I was busy with things that I thought were important. But I missed the most important part of my life, you too. And I'm so sorry I wasn't here from the beginning. I promise, if your mom lets me, I will never leave again." The boy tilted his head, studying him. Then he simply nodded. Children often forgave faster than adults. Maya, however, felt her throat tighten. She could hear the truth in his voice, but she also remembered the man who had chosen work over her every single time. Could people really change? Could James truly put family before his empire now? As the twins laughed at one of James's stories, Maya sat back, watching. Her heart ached with conflicting emotions. Part of her longed to believe in this new James, to let him in for the children's sake. Another part feared the pain of being let down again. Finally, as their hour drew to a close, Maya stood. James, they like you. That's clear. But this is not just about one nice conversation. If you really want to be their father, you'll have to prove it. Day by day. No excuses. No disappearing. James rose to his feet, determination written all over his face. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm not asking for perfection, Maya. I'm asking for a chance. She looked at him for a long time, her heart torn but softening. We'll see, she said quietly. We'll see if you can keep your word. For the first time in years, hope flickered in James's chest. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. It was the beginning of a chance and he was determined not to waste it. The days that followed were unlike anything James Donovan had ever experienced. His world of boardrooms, contracts, and financial success faded into the background, replaced by a new mission, proving himself as a father and rebuilding the fragile trust with Maya. Every morning, he woke early, determined to be part of his children's lives. He helped get them ready for school, tying little shoes and brushing hair with care. The twins giggled at his awkward attempts, yet the laughter filled him with a joy he had never known. This was not about money, deals, or prestige. It was about showing up, day after day, for the two children who carried his name and his heart. Maya watched quietly at first, observing him from a distance. Her instincts warned her to be cautious, to protect the children from disappointment. But she couldn't ignore the small moments that showed James's sincerity, the way he listened to the twins' stories without checking his phone, the patience he showed when the boys' shoelaces kept coming undone, or the gentle way he wiped tears from the girl's cheek after a scraped knee. One afternoon, after school, James suggested they all visit the park. The children's eyes lit up. Can we go on the swings? The boy asked eagerly. Of course, James said with a wide smile. He held the little hands of both children as they ran toward the swings. Maya followed behind, her heart heavy but warming. For the first time in years, she saw a side of James that had been hidden beneath ambition, the side that cared deeply, loved fully, and wanted nothing more than to protect and nurture. James pushed the swings, laughing along with the twins as they squealed with delight. Higher! Higher! The girl shouted. I'll go so high you can almost touch the sky. James teased, spinning around to make her giggle even more. Maya smiled softly, feeling something inside her begin to melt. This changed man was truly here for them. And though she had been hurt so deeply before, she realized that people could change when the heart truly wanted to. That evening, as they sat together for dinner at Maya's apartment, James shared stories from his childhood, funny moments with his parents, silly mistakes he had made, and the lessons he had learned. The children listened with wide eyes, occasionally bursting into laughter. You know, Daddy, the boy said, leaning on his arm, I like you. You tell the best stories. James felt a lump in his throat. Thank you, buddy. That means a lot to me. Maya watched them quietly, a small smile tugging at her lips. She had been so wary, so guarded, but this was not the man who had left her years ago. This was a man willing to sacrifice, willing to be patient, willing to show up for the children no matter what. As the days turned into weeks, James continued to prove himself. He attended school events, helped with homework, and tucked the twins into bed at night, reading stories and holding their hands until they fell asleep. Each small act built a bridge of trust, slowly but surely mending what had been broken. One weekend, Maya finally allowed herself to speak openly. James, I've been watching you, she said softly. I see that you're really trying. And I see the way the children respond to you. They're happier when you're around. I can't deny that. James took a deep breath, holding her gaze. Maya, I can't change the past. But I can promise you this, I will never leave them. I will be here every day, for them and for you, if you let me. Her eyes glistened. I don't know if I can ever forgive the years you missed, she admitted. But I see your effort. And that counts for something. James smiled gently. It counts for everything to me. Over time, their bond grew stronger. The twins learned to trust him, running to him for hugs, showing him their drawings, and asking him questions about the world. He celebrated birthdays, cheered at soccer games, and read bedtime stories every night. Every moment was a reminder that the family he had once lost could be rebuilt, piece by piece. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, the family sat together on the balcony of Maya's apartment. The twins played with their toys, laughing freely. Maya and James watched them quietly, hands brushing lightly. Maya, James said softly, thank you for giving me this chance. For letting me be part of their lives. I don't take it for granted. She looked at him, her eyes filled with cautious warmth. I'm still careful, James. But I can see that you mean it. I can see the change in you. And maybe, just maybe, we can build something new together, as a family. James felt tears prick his eyes, but this time, they were tears of hope. I'll do everything I can to make it right. I promise. The twins ran over to him, and he scooped them up in a hug, holding them close. In that moment, the past seemed to melt away. There were no regrets, no bitterness, only love, hope, and the promise of a future together. James Donovan, the man who had once chosen ambition over love, had finally learned what mattered most. And as he held his children close and looked at the woman he loved, he knew that life had given him the second chance he had always dreamed of. A new beginning had arrived. And this time, he would never let it go.